Hello, this lecture is about emerging business ethics issues among contemporary organisations. The objective of this lecture is to help you gain knowledge on the following aspects. First, the definition of ethical issues from a business perspective and an understanding of its principal causes. Secondly, to become familiar with various types of unethical practices and emerging ethical issues in an organisation. Thirdly, to understand the importance of identifying an ethical issue in business. Let's proceed to gain deeper insights into emerging business ethical issues. An ethical issue in an organisation is a situation or problem that requires thought, discussion, or investigation to make a decision. It can also be defined as a state that requires an organisation to choose between alternatives that can be evaluated as right or wrong. For example, a project manager of an IT company may want developers to work long hours without registering overtime to meet its schedule and budget. An organisation's stakeholders draft the meaning for its business ethics. A firm's specific business decisions are defined as ethical only when its stakeholders at large rate them as ethical. As seen in Lecture 2, the perspective of the stakeholder is essentially broader than that of the shareholder. Shareholders aim at profit maximisation. Organisations following high ethical standards always consider stakeholder perspective. For example, if one business takes over another and dismisses 100 employees in the process, that may serve shareholder interests and save money. However, it does not serve the interests of stakeholders, in this case, the employees. Lack of knowledge towards business ethics initiates a vicious cycle. No awareness about business ethics translates to unidentified issues. If issues are not identified, no corrective measures can be undertaken, which tends to invite more unethical issues to surface. For example, let's assume a business executive is unaware that accepting gifts from vendors is unethical. This action would go unnoticed and accepting gifts might not be checked as a form of bribery. The vendor, who has issued the gifts, would ask for favours in return, which may lead to more unethical practices like the passing of sub-quality material, etc. Personnel can only make an ethical decision after they recognise the ethical issue. As we have seen, ethical issues are defined by stakeholder values. Honesty and fairness are moral constants that can be considered as a yardstick for stakeholder values. It's important that business personnel understand these concepts. Honesty relates to the virtues of truthfulness, trustworthiness, and integrity. Lying, cheating, and stealing are all considered as dishonest and unethical conduct. For instance, people may lie to achieve their performance objectives under individual or organisational pressures. Consider a situation where a customer has prepaid and booked an item for purchase. When the customer inquires about delivery, the salesperson may lie about the delivery schedule to avoid the customer reconsidering their purchase. Fairness relates to being just, equitable, and impartial. For example, employees in an organisation must be compensated with wages that are fair and equal to their efforts. Lack of proper rules and poor enforcement often leads to unethical behaviour in an organisation where winning at all costs is considered imperative. Ethical issues arise due to conflict among individuals' personal values, organisational values or job characteristics, and societal values. Let's now identify prominent causes of unethical behaviour from an organisational perspective. Firstly, there's having to meet overly aggressive financial or business targets. For example, it would be unethical for the sales manager of XYZ Corporation to offer a bribe to the purchasing officer of ABC Corporation to release a purchase order for his products. There are also scheduling pressures, that is, to deliver a project or work on time. For example, a pizza delivery person, when given a short time for delivery, may exceed the speed limit when driving to meet the scheduled delivery time. Then there's unethical conduct with the objective of organisational survival or benefit. For example, At a used car showroom, an automobile mechanic may roll back the odometer of a vehicle to increase the probability of a sale. Next is rationalizing one's unethical actions based on the behavior of others. For example, a chemical manufacturer may compromise environmental priorities by dumping hazardous waste into the water stream by stating that the same practice is being followed by other manufacturers. Then there's resisting competitive threats. For example, engaging in price fixing with retailers and wholesalers to force smaller competitors out of business. And finally, there's job saving. For example, a marketing manager of a corporation may make false promises in favour of a product or service to increase sales in order to safeguard his job. We've just looked at the main causes of unethical conduct in organisations. Now let's discuss some of the common types of unethical practices prevailing in an organisation. Firstly, abusive or intimidating behaviour. This is one of the most common ethical problems in a workplace, and it impacts on employees both emotionally and physically. Employees subject to abuse at their workplace may tend to show less commitment and eventually may end up leaving the organisation. Abusive behaviour includes physical threats, false accusations, public insults, etc. A lie is a statement that is known or intended by its source to be misleading, inaccurate or false. For example, promoting a product as 100% natural while its ingredients actually have chemicals is a type of lie. The types of lies prevalent in an organisation are 1. Joking with malice, which causes no physical harm but sometimes leads a person to think that telling a joke is an expression of either indifference or malevolence. 2. Commission lie. It's about creating a false perception by choosing words that deceive the receiver. For example, a shampoo product may claim to reduce the hair fall by 80% in 7 uses. This may not be measurable and true at all. 3. Omission lying. For instance, intentionally not informing others the complete version of truth. This may affect awareness, intention, or behaviour. For example, a used car salesperson may tell a buyer that the subject vehicle has had all its scheduled maintenance. However, he purposely omits the information that the vehicle underwent a major engine reconstruction. Conflict of interest exists when an individual must choose whether to advance his or her own personal interests, those of the organisations, or of some other group. To avoid conflict of interest, employees must be able to separate their private interests from their business dealings. Bribery is an act of offering or the giving of any item of value to influence the actions of another person. It has become a significant moral concern in organisations and is also defined as an unlawful act. However, law is defined by a country's legal framework, and different countries have different perspectives to bribery. For example, certain types of facilitation payments are not illegal in the USA, but are considered an offence in the UK. The offence of bribery is executed by 2 means. 1. Active bribery, when a bribe is given or offered. And 2. Passive bribery, when a bribe is accepted. Information technology has allowed the exchange of information to become easier and faster. However, the usage of available information has given rise to ethical issues. Examples of issues in this category include employee monitoring, which is the act of watching and monitoring employees' actions during working hours. For example, checking emails. Consumer privacy. For example, the illegal extraction of user data and personal details from websites or social media. And online marketing. This includes promoting or selling a product by providing deceptive details online. Sometimes the images of the entity promoted online are completely different from the actual version received. Corporate intelligence is a legitimate gathering of meaningful information that can be used for staying in competition. Nowadays, business people in large organisations are highly motivated to gather intelligence data from their competitors in an unethical manner. For example, social engineering is one of the most popular techniques for securing information by socialising with competitors in non-business settings. Hacking is also one of the prominent methods to obtain trade secrets. Discrimination is the act of consideration in favour of or against an individual based on some preconceived parameter, discriminating against an individual on the basis of race, colour, religion, sex, marital status, sexual orientation or disability, etc., is considered illegal. For example, promoting an employee based on their race rather than on individual merit. Many governments have formulated law frameworks and corresponding agencies, like the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, to safeguard the interests of individuals against discrimination. Organisations are also taking affirmative action programs by recruiting, training and promoting qualified individuals from groups that have traditionally been discriminated against. Sexual harassment involves repeated, unwanted behaviour of a sexual nature perpetrated upon one individual by another. It pollutes the working environment and can have a devastating effect upon the health, confidence, morale and performance of individuals affected by it. It also undermines the overall brand image of the organisation among stakeholder groups. To avoid sexual misconduct, organisations should frame and enforce policy statements and establish a timely reporting procedure to proper authorities for immediate action. It is important that reporting of such policy violations is encouraged as a culture. Dual relationship refers to a situation where a connection exists between two individuals that share both personal and professional relationships. For example, when a husband and wife share an employer-employee relationship, dual relationship exists which may influence their working together in the same organisation. Fraud is any purposeful communication that deceives, manipulates or conceals facts in order to create a false impression on others. The most common types of fraud are consumer fraud, accounting fraud and marketing fraud. Consumer fraud occurs when a product or service does not perform as advertised. For example, when a telecommunications company charges an individual for roaming calls which was disclosed as free earlier. Accounting fraud occurs when a company's financial disclosures are misrepresented before its stakeholders. An example would be the Satyam scandal, where the founder himself manipulated the company's earnings to cheat investors. Marketing fraud is an illegal practice used by companies to promote their product or services. For example, a cosmetic company's advertisements featuring models whose images are altered to hide imperfections. Now let's discuss emerging ethical issues in business. The three main categories are related to environment, intellectual property rights, and privacy. Environmental concerns are creating ethical issues for individuals, organisations, and public policy makers. The major issues related to environment are air pollution, for instance increases in carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases causing global warming; water pollution, for example oil spills impacting on waterways; waste management. This involves the need for handling waste through proper recycling techniques. And finally, the green revolution. This is the need to increase green cover by planting more trees. Intellectual property refers to creations of human mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, designs, and symbols, names and images used in business. Non-permitted copying of artefacts from others for use as their own is an emerging ethical issue. For example, innovations from small to medium enterprises generally don't gain much financial backing. As their inventions are unprotected, comparatively larger companies can copy them and gain profit. Larger companies can afford to quickly commercialise the service or product. To avoid this, the artefact developing entity should patent their innovations and protect their service or product from copying. Patents, trademarks and intellectual property rights provide legal protection against such acts of non-permitted copying. As the number of people using the internet increases, concerns relating to its use also increases. Privacy issues mainly relate to 1. Establishing policies for internet usage and other technology resources during company time. 2. Electronic monitoring used to determine if there's lost productivity due to time used on personal activities. 3. Consumer privacy issues, such as the lack of consumer control on how companies use their personal information. In this competitive and constantly changing environment, where winning is perceived to be vital, identification of ethical issues has become crucial. Failing at identification and correction of unethical actions puts an organisation at great risk. Methods to identify an ethical issue include: firstly, if an activity is approved by the majority stakeholders of an organisation, it may be considered as ethical. Secondly, if an issue can withstand open discussion with the outside world, it can be considered as ethical. Finally, if an organisation encourages covert discussion and disguises documents, it points to an unethical action. Under all circumstances, an organisation should perform business activities in an ethical manner by being truthful and equitable to gain the trust of its stakeholders. Before we finish, let's look at a few interesting facts relating to ethical practices of an organisation. To conclude, we can observe that by making unethical decisions, an organisation can achieve short-term success. However, in the longer term, it is the adherence to ethical practices that leads to success.